Listen, if you think the hardest part of a deal is finding the buyer, but that's a lie. That's not the real problem. You're out there fishing blind. You're guessing. You're hoping somebody wants what you've got. But with the right data, you don't have to find buyers. You can absolutely target them. So today is my guest is my good friend Burton from PropStream, the industry's most powerful data platform for real estate investors. So whether you're wholesaling or flipping or building your rental portfolio, PropStream gives you the tools to skip, comp them, and reverse engineer exactly who's buying in your area right now without guesswork. No spraying and praying, no just sending endless emails and text messages, just precise data baked buyer targeting that moves your deals fast. So today, with my help, Burton is going to break down the exact filters and searches that you need to find the most overlooked buyer segments that most investors miss. So you never sit on a deal waiting for money again. Welcome to the Closers Club. Let's get right to it. Burton, listen, a lot of new investors out there, they get a deal, right? And then they start to panic. Well, they're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Who's going to buy this? But you are there. You're at the mecca of all data at PropStream. What is one of the biggest misconceptions about finding buyers, and how does real data help them kind of zero in and move these deals faster?
That's a really great question. And I definitely think our data can help people identify the right buyer for their property.
Yeah.
But as we've discussed in the past, data always tells a story. It's just a matter of encrypting that story and figuring it out. So yeah, you let me know where we begin. I'm happy to give you guys some examples of how I would approach this and take it.
Yeah, let me tell you how I used to do it, and then I want to get your take on it. So for me, I was never on the 70% of ARV minus repairs and all that because it's so subjective. And, I don't know what repairs are going to be in Wisconsin, right? I'm in Tennessee. I've lived in Florida. So I don't want to go out there and be guessing on what a roof is or ceramic tile. And here's one thing I've seen that from coaching so many investors is a lot of times you have an acquisitions person and they overinflate the ARV and be very optimistic, and then they underestimate the repair. So that formula, you can be wrong more times than not. So what I used to do, and we've talked about this before, is I love to be in a market and go see what cash buyers are paying. And it's sort of like the ultimate cheat code, right? Because I know if I've got a 1960s house, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, whatever it is, and it's there, the cash sales are 150 to 160. Well, that's what those buyers are going to pay. So I just sort of reverse engineer from that. But also, here's something that my partner Heather, we instituted with Nationwide Property Liquidators when we were wholesaling, was not only would we use that data to find what we should offer, but then we would also capture that data right then and there because that's who our buyers are going to be. So that's kind of what I wanted to look at today, and then kind of get your take on what you're doing.
No, actually, you kind of nailed it on the head. We've observed those behaviors of our users and real estate professionals out there. We've kind of created some filters and other elements that kind of duplicate that method to essentially find that right buyer. So do you want me to just go ahead and pull up a random market and kind of approach this out?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's show somebody. And what I really want to do is focus on, somebody who's newer and just getting started and hasn't done 1,600 deals. Like, how do they go in here and really just, because what you're talking about is the data does tell a story, but a lot of times people may not understand how to manipulate it and use that data to get what they're looking for.
And I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges is like, where do we begin? We got the contract signed. Now, who's the right buyer for this contract? So the first thing I would probably recommend is really understand the property. So when it comes to finding a buyer, there's many ways to approach this. So let's go through some of these avenues here. So the first way I would approach it is by looking at the contract, understanding the property details and the location. So let's say this property is in your market, Chattanooga, Tennessee, right? So we would search that market. And then thankfully we do have a search filter here at the top. So we'd go there. And to make things easier for everybody, we actually have a category, actually 2 categories for everyone. We have the cash buyer quick list option, and that's our lead list option. And these are all, to make it easier for everybody, these are all non-owner occupied cash transactions. So anybody who's buying a property in cash and living in it, we got rid of them, right? We're just looking for those that are buying their second, third, fourth, fifth property in cash. So these are all non-owner cash transactions. But because we have so much data, the one thing I would recommend that you do, this is why I encourage you to pay attention to the property details, is there's a property details section. And our cash buyer results are going to have buyers that buy office spaces, vacant land, commercial buildings, RV parks.
Sure.
We probably don't need all of them. So when it comes to buying a buyer, I like thinking of it like, when you know those dating apps, you want to find the right match for your contract. So if your contract is a single family property that's 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 1,800 square footage, and it's built in 1975, then that's the range in which we're going to want to work with. So in this case, residential, single family, or any other option, again, depending on your property that you're dealing with. Because this one was 3 bedrooms, we'll do 3 to 4. You never know. Maybe we might want a buyer that's going to add a second bathroom or another bedroom in there, or maybe 2 to 4. There could be a 2-bedroom buyer out there who wants to now upgrade to a 3-bedroom property, right? So we don't want to just only look for 3-bedroom buyers, even though they exist. In this case, I'm creating a range of buyers, 2 to 4-bedroom buyers. Gotcha. And then year built, because there are buyers that only want newer properties, and there are buyers that are comfortable with the older properties with foundation issues. If this property is built in 1960, then I probably want a buyer that's comfortable buying between 1950, perhaps even 1970. So the way that I look at this first avenue is just utilizing our search filter. But the thing that we want to do is really make sure that they match that contract. So in this case, cash transactions, residential single family, 2 to 4 bedrooms, built between 1950 and 1970. And we're down to 1,094. And if I could just give one more piece of advice when it comes to building a buyer's list, I head over to our ownership information and occupancy section.
Yes. Gosh, this is so good. This is the best stuff.
And this filter right here, I want to highlight, and it's the numbers of property owned filter, because again, tons of different buyers that buy land, commercial buildings. There are also buyers that only have bought 1 property and buyers that have 15 properties. So what I would recommend is, if you're looking for a very aggressive buyer, maybe put a minimum, like find me a buyer with at least 5 or more properties. So not only are you finding an aggressive buyer, but I also want to introduce this thought process. Finding a buyer with a portfolio means that buyer will probably look at your contract with 2 different lenses, a fix and flip lens and a rental portfolio lens, versus buyers that only fix and flip, and that's all they do. If you present your contract to a fix and flipper and only a fix and flipper, if the margins aren't there, they're not going to see value in it. Versus a buyer that has a portfolio, the margins may not be there for a fix and flip, but it may cash flow for a rental property. So in this case, single family cash transactions, 2 to 4 bedrooms, built between 1950 and 1970s, and just make sure these buyers have at least 5 properties or more. So we're dealing with aggressive buyers that will also look at it in different strategies.
I think this is one of the most
723.
Yes, right. I think this is one of the most overlooked filters. I was at an event. Oh goodness, I don't remember where. I think it was Miami, and I was sitting way in the back at one of our vendor tables, and I heard somebody on stage say that you could put in the number of properties, and man, my head popped up. I don't think anybody else in there caught how powerful that is. Especially, this was back when we were looking for like hedge funds and things, like we were trying to track down the hedge funds. And if you go into a market like in Virginia, right, someplace where they're very active, and you put in 100 properties, right? If you want to get really aggressive and, hey, I only want to find the most serious buyers, put in 100 or put in 50 or 200, right? And you will see that number go from 700 down to just a handful. And you will know that those are for real buyers, right?
Yes, sir.
So and I think this is important to highlight when we're talking about all these filters and all the 2 to 3 bedrooms and the square footage and bathrooms and all of those things, all that does is it took us from what was it, 14,000, and it just keeps concentrating, bringing us down to exactly what we want, because we don't have time to call 14,000 people. Right.
No,
if you're trying to sell your deal, I want to make sure I'm using my time in the best way possible to call the people who are most likely. There's no guarantee that anybody's going to buy your deal, but I want to spend my time, in the most responsible manner, because there's only 24 hours in a day, right? There's only so much time that I've got.
Absolutely. And it's a very valid point. Again, what we're trying to do is we're just trying to position ourselves in the right way possible. And I have 723 single family cash buyers, multiple properties. And if your property matches what they normally are buying, you've caught their attention. So, but to your point, David, it's not guaranteed, but we are increasing the probability. That's all we're doing.
Like narrow it down and go people who did this recently.
Yeah, so we can maybe even do like the last 90 days. So
sure.
September, how about we start June 1st? So show me buyers in the last 90 days that have multiple properties, and we have 10 of them in this market. So
nice. So now,
whether it's the last year, last 6 months, you have those filters available.
Right. So these are people who bought at least 5 properties or own at least 5 properties. And now we've got 10 buyers, right? So what would be the next step here? What would we do next?
So the next step would be to essentially highlight them all. And there's this little button here at the top to select all these results. So whether it's 10 or 1,000, then head over to the actions, and then you want to save them to a marketing list. So feel free to add it to an existing list or just create a new one. But the idea now is you can export this list. Depending on your package, we have free skip tracing, so you can skip trace it to get the phone numbers and emails. And we even have a marketing section. So if you want to send them a postcard, you want to send them an email, and then in the near future, we even are going to integrate a dialer. That might even be an option for you too. So
that's pretty cool. So a couple of things that I love here. One is that there's a map function. So if you're just going into a market and maybe you want to look at cash sales within the last year, now I can see exactly where the activity is happening, right? So maybe you're putting out bandit signs, you're going old school, or you're sending out postcards, right? And which you can send out, like postcards to buy properties. You can do that right through your system. Like I can really target and this is why I love PropStream and the data that you guys provide. I'm such a big fan because, when I started out, I didn't have $1 million to spend on marketing. I had like 300, and I needed to make sure that every single one of those dollars was well spent. And it was like a little soldier. When I sent it out, when it went out through the post office, I wanted to come back with 10 friends, right? I wanted to 10x my return on ad spend, my ROAS, if we're going to be fancy. I wanted to make sure that, I had the highest opportunity of making money. So yeah, I love that, you can certainly send out like we buy houses by postcards, right? But also one thing that I did, and we've talked about this, I created a little template off of one of your postcards, which you as the user can go in there and do. And it was just like yellow. It had my company's logo on it. I had some text that was pretty generic for selling houses, like, hey, Nationwide Property Liquidators, we sell more houses, big discounts, all those things. And all I did was changed out the front picture for my new property. And I would send that out to the top 20 or 30 buyers on every single property in a market where I was, active continuously, because those people would call in, and some people would go, but David, sometimes I've sold the property. I'm like, that's fantastic. There's no better call to get indispositions than, man, Burton, that property sold really quick, but I have more coming. Tell me what you're looking for.
Oh, I love that. That's so smart.
Right? Now we're in this conversation, and I'm going to talk to you, and I'm going to be like, hey, that one's sold, but I've got some more coming. Tell me what you're looking for. Oh, I want the purple house on the red hill with the blue door. And I'm like, you know what? I think I've got some more coming just like that. Let me get your information. Let me put you into my database so I can put you on my VIP list. This is how we build these relationships with buyers.
That's so smart.
Yeah, those postcards, that was the best money how we're building these buyers lists.
That's genius. That's so smart. Very strategic. I like that. Very, very out of the box thinking there. And
Yeah.
Valuable information you just gave out.
Yeah. Well, with, when you're trying to dispo these properties, again, this is why I wanted you to come on, because I know so many people struggle, but we have to play all of our aces, right? I want to,
Yes.
call, maybe I want to text if I'm not in Texas, right? Or, some places you could still do RVMs, but I want to do everything I can to get in front of all of the buyers who are, buying right now. So maybe if 10
Yeah.
people wasn't enough, maybe I go back in and I go, well, I just want 6 months worth of people, right? So you can adjust these filters in and out.
Yeah, and actually, I love that you mentioned that, because you said it earlier in the call. There's all sorts of different buyers. There is actually another angle that I don't think many people even consider when they're building a buyer's list,
Mm,
and that's just looking
yeah.
around what's happening around the property. So with this
Right.
avenue here, let's assume I have a property
Mhm.
already, right?
Yeah.
What most people don't realize is that when you're in the property details, so let's say this
Yeah.
property here, let's go to satellite view so you guys can see it, right?
Mhm.
So let's say one of these properties is under contract. One thing that a lot of people don't realize is that within the property details, we
Mhm.
have a section called comparables and nearby listings. Now,
Right.
normally this is an area where people would run their comps. And so, you're
Mhm.
looking to get an after repair value. You're looking to get, let me go out like 2 miles to get some results here just to show for this demonstration.
Yeah.
But this is an area, normally this first box is where people would normally use our county records to
Yeah.
see a cash transaction or
Mhm.
family
Mhm.
transfer, or maybe even our MLS data to see what's sold through an agent and kind of get their prices that way. But a lot of people don't realize there are other categories in here. And so one, David, you mentioned is, what are people in the area that are flippers
Yes.
doing? And we have this section here called
Mhm.
the flip comp section. And what I like about this
Mm.
is this will display any address that has been flipped, meaning someone bought it and then sold it within
Resold it.
24 months of
I
that
love that. That's
purchase.
genius.
So you'll see the address, you'll be able to see the details, you'll be able to see the purchase price and the flip amount and the gross profit. Another thing to note too, a lot of people don't consider is the neighboring records. Remember, neighbors like to increase their property lots sometimes. So a
Yes.
lot of people don't realize when you're looking at the subject property, and you can go into this section and then also pull out any of the neighboring information. So
Mhm.
neighbor number one, you can click on, you can go into the details. And what I would recommend that you look at when you're looking at the neighboring records next to the subject property is the linked properties tab. That lets you know that that
Yes.
neighbor also likes to buy multiple properties.
Right.
So rather than reaching out to a neighbor, across county lines or on the other part of a different zip code,
Yeah.
the neighbor is a investor. So
Right.
literally the next door neighbor has 7 properties under their portfolio. If
Mhm.
you have this property under contract, you might want to just go right across the lawn, knock on that neighbor's door and say,
Yeah.
there's a potential probability for you to increase your
Yeah.
lot now, right?
And
So
especially
this
if
is
you've
an
got
avenue.
vacant land, my goodness, like the neighbor is almost always going to be your buyer. I sold a property here in Chattanooga, and it was kind of a next to a subdivision, but sort of the subdivision houses were a little higher, and they wanted to buy that house that was down below because they did not want anybody to build behind them. They literally bought a
Mm.
house, tore it down, and it's just it's a vacant lot, and they cut the grass on it because they don't want anybody next to them. I don't know if I was selling to Mark Zuckerberg's cousins or something, but like literally just buying up lots to create this compound around them.
Yeah, so this would be a kind of an angle, not too frequently used, but it does exist, and this is
Yeah.
a valid strategy. And so one
Mhm.
thing, again, you guys might want to consider is just
Mhm.
who's on the block that's an investor. And our link
Right.
properties tab can help you. Just click on the neighboring tab, go into the details of those 10 properties next to the subject property, and look for that link property tab. And when you do, that's your potential buyer that you can go after.
I love that, guys. So this is the easiest way to go out and find a buyer without there's no headaches. It's very, very simple. Nothing we did here was complicated. You can literally replay this video, stop it, go, what did Burton click on? Let me click on that. That's what I do because I'm not that smart, right? So you can literally just duplicate everything that we're doing here. And this is how you find buyers. And then like you said, you can either skip trace it through the system, which I have skip traced millions of records through PropStream, or if you have, and maybe you can talk about the different, you can you?
Yeah, so depending on your package, we do have free skip tracing. So if you're on the essential plan, which is our first plan, $99 a month, then the skip tracing is 12 cents per address.
Right.
However, the plan I recommend, and you'll see why, is our Pro plan. It's $199 a month. That plan gives you 50,000 addresses every month. So you can go to any market, because we are nationwide. You can go to any market, apply your filters. You get 50,000 addresses every month to not only save, but 50,000 free skip tracing as well every single month. So that's a value of about $6,000 a month.
Yeah.
Heck, I even tell people, even if you're not going to use all 50,000 records, I would still pull out, 50,000 records in the market, like all the high equity records up to 50,000, and skip trace them and just have them set aside. But the idea there, guys, is we're trying to give you the value of, again, getting closer to that homeowner. So check that out.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, 50,000, that gives you the ability, right? The ability to start to go into new markets, or, hey, maybe I need another list of buyers, and you don't have to worry about, oh, geez, I don't want to be paying for skip tracing and hitting my American Express. A one-stop shop. And, again, always a big supporter of PropStream and everything that you guys do, that you just keep adding more and more functionality and just benefits for your users.
Yeah, I mean, that's our goal. Is we believe in you guys. And so anything we can do to encourage, to get you guys closer to achieving financial freedom, changing your family tree, helping other homeowners. I know some of you guys just love helping. So if there's any way we can help get you to your goals, that's what we're going to do.
Right. Yeah. And that's, I like the greatest wealth creation vehicle that there is. And, having something like PropStream on your side is 100% crucial. You cannot do this business. You just can't. Like, it's, you can pretend to be like, I'm going to go to Zillow and try to figure it out, but you can't do any of the things that we just talked about here. Having that data, and then watching videos like this and understanding how to take that data and manipulate it for what you need. Like, that's so crucial. That's why we do videos like this. But again, real estate for me has given me a life that I don't deserve sometimes. So I want to make sure that you guys understand how to come in and use a service like PropStream to get these deals. Not only get them, but then let's find the buyers, and then Easy REI Closings will come in. We'll help you get those things closed. So, Burton, last question. I'm going to hit you really hard here at the end, put you on the spot. So you have worked with literally probably all of the top real estate investors in the country. You speak on stages. You're at all the events for investors and agents. What is something that those people do with PropStream, right? That most normal everyday users, they kind of overlook. But if they added that into what they're doing, into their systems or into their processes, it's a game for them.
Yeah, I would say that we have a feature called Lead Automator, and there's a feature, and this is actually one of the past episodes we had discussed. It's that import feature. A lot of people, I think this just is common behavior, or it's just a behavior that it just kind of came with the past, and we just never got rid of it. And it's this behavior of losing confidence in a list. So what I've noticed in the past is that someone would build a list, and typically around 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, sometimes 6 months, they just lose confidence in that list. And so they stop marketing to it. Heck, they go back to the source and they buy a new list using the same filters. What they don't realize is that a huge portion of the new list are still the same addresses from the previous list. And so with Lead Automator, we have two features. One, you can import an outside list into Lead Automator, and we can give you today's data, right, that we have on those properties. So if you have a vacant list from a year ago that's just been sitting on your desktop, first off, kudos to you for not deleting it. Second, check out Lead Automator, import it, and then we can tell you what's sold or what's still under ownership and what's still vacant. Who has a certain mortgage, who has equity, who doesn't. So I would say our import feature is a very slept on feature. And I encourage everyone that's listening to bring in your old data and use our data to refresh it, because trust me, there are still leads in those old lists that you've been sleeping on. You just need current data to know who to make a move on.
Yeah. One thing, for us, we would drive for dollars, we would import or export lists, whatever. We're always building lists. But for me, it was just one big list and I just kept adding to it. And I would scrub out the duplicates because keep marketing to these people.
Mhm.
Time and circumstances changes everything. They may not have answered your postcard or your text or your call or whatever it was 6 months ago, but life happens, right? Unfortunately, people pass away, people get job transfers, people get married and they don't need that house. So keep marketing to these people because it takes 7, 8, sometimes 10, 12 touches. But sooner or later, if you're there and you're, providing value, these people, when a life change happens, you'll be the person they reach out to. So I think that's fantastic. Continue to market to these lists.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Guys, if you found that helpful, make sure you like and subscribe. And if you're an investor and you know other investors, share this episode with them so that they can take a look at PropStream and how they can use this amazing software to, find more buyers, right? We want to move those deals just as quickly as we can. If you're not using PropStream, click the link, propstream.com/my name, David Olds. We've got a free 7-day trial for you. We want to make sure that you are using the power of the country's probably biggest data collector and, certainly the number one software for real estate investors in the country. So make sure you share that with them. And, we will see you next time on the Closers Club. Burton, my friend, thank you so
Thank you,
much.
David.
For everybody else, we'll see you at the